Aloha, everyone. I'm Ian Finn. I'm a yogi and a surfer and a blissologist. Welcome to Shift, which is about conscious evolution, especially for men. And with me today is Dylan Werner, great friend, amazing yogi, and I'm so honored that you're here, brother.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and just a little backstory. It's 11 o'clock as we film right now, and I asked Dylan if he could come at 11. And he said, I can make my 4-hour practice a little bit shorter. I was like, wow, that is amazing. 4-hour practice, everybody. As a dad, that seems like a miracle. What's your 4-hour practice like?
Having no kids and being a yoga teacher and being here in Bali during COVID has allowed me to do that. Normally, I don't get the luxury of having as much time in the morning.
So it's kind of like riding the... It's funny, I always think of lockdown as like a slowdown, you know what I mean?
Well, you remember how much time traveling takes and traveling and teaching and how hard it is to maintain a routine and so being here.
Do you know today's my anniversary as someone who is like normally an elite flyer. I don't know why they call it elite, but it's been 1 year since I've been on an airplane officially today.
Really?
Yeah, today's my 1 year anniversary and I love it. The smaller my eco footprint gets, it seems like the happier I become for exactly the reasons like you were talking. You really not waste time traveling and dive in. So yeah, your practice is...
Yeah, so now I have time to really like establish a routine, and it seems like it just gets longer and longer because I'm enjoying it more and more. And I have elements of my practice that I've always done that have stayed the same, and then others I've just been able to lengthen. So I've always, not always, but for the past many years, I don't know how many years, I've woken up and done the 30-minute meditation. It's just kind of been the best way for me to start my morning.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to have like a bit of a pranayama practice, but it's never been really that consistent as it has been for the past maybe year and a half. And since I've been here, I've upped it quite a bit to about 45 minutes to an hour every single day. And I have different goals, and one of the goals I've really been working with breathing has been increasing athletic performance. So like usually people really use breath just for like the more, in yoga anyways, more of the meditative side of it, but the breath is such a powerful tool that you could use for everything. And I've been really working on increasing my lung capacity, my respiratory strength, my respiratory control.
Yeah.
One thing that people don't understand about breathing is it's like any other skill. There's like fine tuning to it. Like a handstand, right? You could jump in a handstand and be moving all over the place, or you could hold like really still and stable. Breathing is the same way. So there's like a certain level of control that takes practice. So like understanding how to do holds or interrupting the breath in certain stages. So working towards that level of like breathing dexterity, increasing my VO2 max, which is how much your body can actually utilize the oxygen, which helps for cardio and everything else, all levels of fitness.
That's such an amazing aspect because so many people think about yoga as calming down and like not enhancing performance necessarily. Do you know who Andrew Huberman is?
I don't.
Okay, he's a neuroscientist at Stanford. Amazing. I listen to his podcast a lot, and he really talks about how breath is a great tool that can amp you up a little bit or bring you down. And it's not that we need to, bring you down in terms of calming you down. And it's not that we need to be calm and serene all day long. We need to kind of have more amping up of our nervous system to be able to perform more athletic tasks. Is that something that resonates to you?
Yeah. I really enjoy a meditative practice, and which is why I do meditation. But I also enjoy doing burpees and running and surfing and doing really active things, rock climbing.
Those ones,
and I've always been a mover, and I really mean like since birth, movement has been my life, and I grew up doing sports, and like I used to really pride myself that I had basically every single board for every sport that you can do, or kayak or whatever. Like I used to have
a picture on my fridge. I can't remember who made it. It was like Ford or something. It had a picture of a guy just like that. Like I was one of those people too who had a board for everything, and had a guy sitting there meditating, and the tagline was to be one with everything, you have to have one of everything. And so this guy had mountain bikes and surfboards and skateboards and snowboards, and he's meditating. And like, I grew up like that too. So.
Yeah. So I mean, we with meditation, there's a goal of it, and it doesn't necessarily mean to be like all stoic and as my teacher Doss would always do, here. I mean, this to be centered, and it is it helps you with everything else. It basically, like, meditation is the keel on a boat, right? It keeps you steady as you cut through the rough water.
Totally.
And that doesn't mean that you go slow all the time. It means that if you're cutting through and it's turbulent, you could be going 40 knots.
It's amazing when you follow that analogy through, that if you don't have meditation or breathing as a skill, you're basically sailing a boat called your mind with no keel, to use your analogy, right?
Yeah, I've actually never used that analogy before, but it seems to fit pretty well.
Yeah, we're close to the ocean here.
Yeah. So, like that's what meditation does, and pranayama the same way. It's still that keel, but we could go slow or fast with it, and you could use it if you want to race, or you could use it if you want to stand still.
Catch fish.
Right. Yeah. So that's really
an important message. And do you feel like that's kind of out there? Or I mean, and again, I get what you're saying. Just to make sure everyone's clear, we're not saying that yoga and meditation and breathing tools should only be used to elevate your athletic performance, but it does kind of. I don't hear that message a lot. I'm starting to hear it more now, and as I mentioned, like with Stanford neuroscientist Andrew Huberman and people like that, they're talking about bringing the nervous system down is commonly what people talk about. I don't hear about like the increasing athletic performance.
Well, meditation and pranayama, they're not goals.
Yeah.
Like, yoga is not a goal. It's my goal isn't to meditate every day. Or my goal isn't to meditate for 30 minutes every day, or whatever. Meditation is a tool. Same thing with pranayama. It's a tool.
Yeah.
And tools are versatile, and they're also, some tools are very exact. So picking the right tool for what you want, or changing that tool, is really going to affect the outcome so that you can move towards your goals.
Totally.
So really, like, pranayama could be anything you want if you understand what your goal is, and then you pick the right pranayama practices. Because there's everything from holding your breath as long as you can to breathing as fast as you can.
Yeah.
And everything in between, and that's all breathing.
I can't help but think about sailing. We're kind of talking about sailing because you need a boat, body, mind. You need a rudder, which is the breathing meditation. But you also need the charts. To figure out where you're going, and that's kind of the goal. You know what I mean? We're trying to go from here to here, and right now I want to arrive in this state, and my life is requiring me now to be in this calm state, or now I'm going to do something like running or burpees or something. It's like, and that's so cool that breath work can take you to either of those places. And you've just written a book on this, right?
Yeah, I did.
Written a book.
I just wrote a book. Actually, this morning, my publisher, because the book is now printed.
Yeah.
Which is really exciting. I haven't got it yet because mail's slow here in Bali.
/ non-existent.
But the publisher just sent me images of the book, and I'm really, really excited. I'm actually just. The Illuminated Breath.
Illuminated Breath. I love it.
Yeah. It's I think it's February 23rd. It ships worldwide.
Okay.
The hard copy will come out first, and then there'll be a Kindle version after that. I'm not sure when.
Cool. I'm looking forward to getting my hands on it for sure. I think it's such a great skill, and I think you're really good at dissecting complicated topics. You got such a logical mind that you can really like make them bite-sized pieces for people. Yeah.
Yes,
do you feel like that's happened?
Yeah, I mean,
mission accomplished.
It really helped work because I normally do everything on my own and stuff, and so I wrote the book in completion, and I sent it to my editor, and the editorial process of that, or I don't even know if that's the right word for that, but the editing process of that, of cutting it down or was actually really helpful.
Was it kind of like, here's my finished product, and they're like, no, we call this a first draft?
Yeah, exactly. And they're like, you need to explain this better or whatever. And working with somebody that is a great editor and great writer, and and all that, and also someone that hasn't done breathing,
Yeah.
or yoga,
Yeah.
because I really wanted this book to be for everybody. So I did my best to explain concepts that you don't have to have, any understanding of yoga. You don't have to have any understanding of breathing to understand the book. Like, everything is really explained. There's a lot of foundational work, especially in the beginning of the book, laying out concepts, the physiology of breathing, the nervous system, and I talk about the nervous system in a couple different ways. One, how it affects us on a physiological level. One, how it affects us on an emotional level.
I love it.
And then how those things relate to the emotional bodies, and how yoga uses these different systems of energy, or I call them systems of balance in the book, to basically lay out like a map on how to navigate, the charts, how to navigate the waters, and what tools you need to bring you there. So it's a big part of the book is bringing the Western science together with the Eastern philosophy.
Yeah.
And what's really interesting, and something that inspired me to do this book, is as I've been teaching breath work for the past 10 years, one of the things that I love so much about it is how much of an overlap there is. And when you see something that is very old and has been studied, and kind of, yoga is a system that we or the yogis, they came up with everything because they studied from the outside in.
Yeah.
And that was the journey, where science, at least Western science, is very much from the inside out. And it's something that's so interesting to see, that
it's more about data and
like thousands of years ago they saw all these things and these effects, just from studying the body as a whole, and science has confirmed almost all of those things. And so
it is wild, isn't it?
Yeah, so this overlap of how breathing affects us on an emotional level, the science shows exactly how it does.
Such an amazing time to be in the field of yoga and breathing, because it used to be that breath work was this woo-woo and yoga was this woo-woo thing out here, and science was over here. And it still is like that, but there's definitely kind of this Venn diagram in the middle where they're intersecting, and I feel like that's the space that you're occupying, which is so important. It's a really cool time to be alive. So let's say, as far as giving people tools, right? Like you're talking about the emotional release. So let's say I'm working at a desk. I kind of don't like my job.
Right.
I get a paycheck, my relationship's not going great, and my mom has just been diagnosed with cancer, And I feel like a lot of time, it's not just men, this is humans, but I feel like men really don't have a big toolbox for this.
Yeah.
Mostly we stuff things down, and I would say a lot of people would, in that scenario, to make themselves feel better. I'm not saying there's not a time and place for this, but I feel like the only tool we have is to go to the pub, watch the Seahawks game or whatever, disassociate from it, have a bunch of beers, and forget about it. And again, maybe there's a time and place for that. It's not for me to judge, but would you say that's, no, don't worry what would you say about it. What would you say breathing has to offer, let's say somebody in that scenario that just built up?
Well,
working hard, feeling stressed. A disaster happens.
I really relate to what you said there, because for so long, that was it doesn't matter how I did it. Like, sometimes my dissociation would come through working out so hard that I would kill myself.
Yeah.
Right. Just like if I really felt bad about something, which could be a positive way, but it's also not a positive way. And I think one of the first things to understand with any tool, dissociation is a tool. Drinking is a tool. It's not a healthy one, but it's still a tool that helps you.
And hopefully you're doing it with friends, and if it's a totally different thing.
It helps you get through whatever you're doing. That's why people turn to these things, or people turn to a lot of things that are unhealthy for them because something else is bothering them. With breathing is another tool, and the thing is it could help, but it won't fix anything.
Right.
And that's actually something else I'd lay out in the book, is you have to work on the underlying problems. Right? You have to do the hard work of actually not disassociating, but facing it, understanding it, and moving in head on. I think one of the nice things about this kind of this mindfulness era that we're moving into.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we've been in it for a long time,
But more mainstream.
But now it's becoming a lot more mainstream where
you can do a mindfulness class at Google now, right?
Where like men, it was never talk about your feelings.
Yeah.
Like, push everything down. Push it down with brown.
Stay in the box.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like now I feel like more and more men especially, but women as well across the board are allowing those things to come up. They're talking about those things. They're seeking help and they're seeking support.
Yeah.
And community is probably one of the strongest things to help with that. And then once you start to like face your problems and understand and start to fix those areas of challenge, like if breathing could help your nervous system and could help, like for example, one of the things that breathing affects is the balancing of the nervous system. So the nervous system is really a three-part thing. So if we think of the sympathetic and parasympathetic as two-part, right? The sympathetic is the fight or flight, parasympathetic is the rest and digest.
Yeah.
But the parasympathetic is really split into two different pathways. This is underneath the polyvagal theory, which I go into light detail in the book, but more of like how you use the polyvagal theory than like the full understanding, because it's a really complicated subject to go into. And if you're looking into learning more about it, there's Stephen Porges, who's the one that wrote the book on the polyvagal theory. Literally, the book's called The Polyvagal Theories. Is a really good resource to look at that. But the polyvagal theory, or the autonomic nervous system, which is working everything that we don't think about, helps us interact socially with other people.
Yeah.
Right. So if we have the sympathetic, the ventral vagal complex, and the dorsal vagal complex, and so the ventral vagal complex, this is kind of sits at the hierarchy of the whole thing, and this is what allows us to communicate with each other. And the nervous system also blends. It's not like an on-off, like you're parasympathetic or you're sympathetic. They release hormones and neurotransmitters into the body.
They call it tone, right? How much tone?
Yeah, how much tone you have of each one, and this really helps us to navigate our world fluidly.
Yeah.
So I was thinking like anything, or you don't need to fight against anything that flows.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
well, it's funny because when a few minutes ago when we were kind of more at a shallow level talking, on this topic, you were saying that people aren't educated about how to breathe, and you want to make them more enlightened, or illuminated breath, right? More illuminated about it. And I think that's so important because you can start to see that most people are like, yeah, I just breathe. And what I say a lot is that breathing's easy, but breathing well is hard. Like, I can go to a saxophone and make a sound.
Yeah.
But actually playing a song on a saxophone is hard. And what you're getting at, I think, it sounds like to me, is that to get the right tone of what life is asking of you,
right,
is a skill. And it's a learned skill. And we just, as men or women, we kind of have a blunt tool that we're working with. And it's great that you're enhancing.
It's amazing when you start picking up on like subtle cues of the nervous system. You could actually see what part of someone's nervous system they're dominantly in. Right? Someone that is like very open and the chest is open, their posture is upright, all this is, and their face moves a lot, they talk with their hands, they maybe smile a lot, there's a lot of eyeing, there's a lot of engagement with the eyes or eye contact. Like, this is all very significant of the ventral vagal complex, which is part of the parasympathetic nervous system, which is and which works into all the other cranial nerves of the face.
Yeah.
But if someone that is, so we think sympathetic is the bad part because that's a fight or flight, right? That's where we get angry or whatever, or we run. But it's also, that's when we feel unsafe, right? When we feel safe, the sympathetic is what allows us to move and play and do sports and surf and yoga and all these other things. Well, then there's the dorsal vagal complex part of that. And this is where a lot of people are stuck. And as yogis, when we're safe in this is where a lot of our pranayama practice comes from, our meditation, where we feel grounded. In yoga, this would be the tamasic energy, the guna of tamas.
Tell us, just in case people don't know what's tamas.
So tamas, so there's the gunas, which are the aspects of energy that's manifested through everything in the universe, the physical energy. And so there's rajas, which is like passionate outward expanding energy. Tamas is the downward contracting energy, and then sattva is the upward flow, but upward flow as far as spiritual growth goes. So it really has to do with being balanced. So sattva is like the balance. It's also related to the ventral vagal complex. Spiritual growth and all this comes from finding our balance between the two. So when we see it's like someone's really in the dorsal vagal complex, there's less eye contact. They don't really look at you. They're down here like this, and they're shut off. When we feel unsafe, this is like the freeze response. It's also like make excuses and lying and manipulation and like these other. It's just it puts you away from people. And the interesting thing about the breath is the breath could actually help to bring you out of this by affecting the nervous system. So it could help you open up energetically through the nervous system and free parts, like free you out of being stuck in that, so that you could start to work and face into the deeper lying problem. So in that way, it becomes a really useful tool in that. And it has to do with like each aspect of the breath affects a different part of the nervous system.
Yeah. It's funny, as you were talking, it made me think about how, I just made the analogy of something you said previously. It's like playing the saxophone is really complicated, but actually it's so simple too, in the sense of, I'm sure if your friend was slouched over like this, and you can put fancy terms on it with physiology, like ventral vagal complex, but if someone slouched over, you'd be like, hey man, take a big breath.
Yeah.
I'm sure cavemen were sitting in caves going, Zorg, take a big breath, dude. You're stressing out.
And you see that too. If I'm here like this, it's really hard to inhale. This is a position of exhalation, and also a position of depression. If I take a deep breath,
can't happen.
As I breathe deeper, I immediately have to change my position. It's one of the things I love so much about yoga. Yoga shows the connection, the interconnection, or the interdependence of everything together: the physical, the spiritual, the emotional, and bringing the breath and the energy body.
You kind of can't deal with one piece of the puzzle. You got to put them all together.
Yeah, I can't fix my head if I don't fix my body, if I don't fix my energy or my breath.
Yeah,
and that's the other thing. Like, people think energy is this woo woo kind of out there thing, but we think because of energy. We feel because of energy. We have emotions.
What's your definition of energy?
Energy is movement. It's an impulse. It's when we think about the nervous system, it's almost like an electrical impulse that happens through this sodium potassium pump through the nerves as signals move, right? And that affects other things. So anything that is basically movement is energy. And there's lots of different types of energy. There's kinetic energy, there's thermal energy, there's emotional energy, right? But they all kind of work pretty much the same. And life, everything is moving. There's nothing in the universe, unless it's at like Kelvin, like 0 Kelvin, that like absolute zero, that isn't moving. Even things that we think are solid are moving, and it because it's just.
I love that. It's beautiful. I mean, I think it's super important, especially as yogis, to like my definition of a flake. Is somebody who uses a term but doesn't really know what it means. And so as yogis, we just kind of say energy, and we don't really sort of know what it means. And it's so good to own it. And that's what I'm saying I love about you, this logical mind. I knew when I said, what is energy, that you would have something for it, a definition for it. You don't just like partly own these things. And that's back to a previous point. That's why I think it's important to have this fusion of science and, new age woo-woo, whatever, which is actually old age yoga knowledge, where it's coming together. And we're like, no, actually we are talking about, in your terms, energy, our movement. There's a movement to things. And there's a vibration, really.
Right. Yeah.
And that communicate. That's a form of communication. Like, my definition of energy is a subtle communication system. Like if I write something to you, it's overt, you can see it, but there's subtle ways we communicate. And yeah, we're giving this off all the time, and the breath is such a beautiful tool to be able to change that frequency.
Another important thing with energy too, to say like, oh, this energy, or to look at anything, is we learn things in yoga. And with my students, I'm sure you do the same with your students. It's like, okay, learning this is good, but how is it useful? And if you learn anything and it's not useful, you'll never remember it.
Exactly.
And it doesn't hold significance to you. So like something as simple as the Vayus, which most people don't know unless you've gone through like a yoga teacher training, or you've studied into like some sort of yoga philosophy. And I remember when I learned it, I had a great yoga school and they probably taught me the meaning, but it wasn't useful to me at that time, so I didn't remember it. Right? What I remembered from the Vayus was Vayus means wind.
Yeah.
And so there's 5 Vayus, and it basically is just a map of how energy moves through the body. Right? And it's like, okay, so big deal. Like the energy moves through the body in all different ways, and one of the ways it moves through the body is through the nervous system.
Right.
The other way that it moves through the body is through the fascial system, through transmission of force.
Yeah.
Right. Directly, or kinetic energy, or thermal energy. If you go into a cold plunge, that cold moves the energy, or the heat, the thermal energy, to your core.
Yeah.
If you're really hot outside, it moves the energy or the heat to your extremities, so that you regulate or you sweat. So this is all movements of energy. Thinking, okay, well, what did the Vayus do? Well, the Vayus is a movement of energy, but it shows us our balances and our imbalances. And they represent certain things. So it puts together a map of like, okay, well, Uddiyana Vayu, which is Uddiyana, is this upward spiraling flow of energy. Okay, great. Well, what does that mean? Well, it's not that spiraling up means anything. It's what does it or I guess it means something, but really, what does it represent?
What are the implications?
Yeah, what are the implications of that? And okay, so it's like my energy flows upwards, but really, like when I'm thinking about this is, more of like my goals, dreams, aspirations, things that I want to go out kind of in the future. Right. Well, if I'm healthy, then in that area, then I'm moving forward, and I'm accomplishing things, and I'm growing in my life. And if I'm unhealthy, I'm a dreamer, and it's just too much, and I can't rein anything in. Right. Well, this is really affected through the inhale, because that's also what affects our sympathetic nervous system, or the Rajas guna, which is to go up and expand until exhaustion. Right? So it needs a balance. Well, Uddiyana Vayu is balanced with Apana Vayu. And Apana Vayu, when it's healthy, it's our sense of self. It's also our ability to release and let go, and stay centered and grounded. But if we have too much Apana Vayu, and we're too much in this, which is also related to the dorsal vagal complex of the parasympathetic nervous system, it's also related to the tamasic guna of pulling everything in together, downward and contracting, then I'm stuck. Right? It's like I'm a rock. I have no freedom to go anywhere. I'm too attached. Imbalances with Apana Vayu brings out attachment. I can't.
How do you think alcohol fits into this? Because I feel like just we mentioned it earlier, that alcohol is the tool, that we use to bring down, that's culturally acceptable.
I mean, alcohol is like, it's not an unhealthy thing. It's not a healthy thing. It's a thing.
Yeah. I mean, my problem is that it's the only thing.
Right.
I'm not
So if you use alcohol to disassociate, and you're drinking a ton so that you can't be with yourself, then that's kind of a bad thing. But if you go out to dinner with a bunch of friends and you have some wine and you're social, and it allows you to let go of some inhibitions and open up, like, that's not, like, from a social engagement standpoint, that's not necessarily a bad thing. To be relying on that might be a bad thing. And really, that's not like a hard yes or no. That's a how are you using it. Right. So, but to go back to the Vayus, Apana and Uddiyana Vayu, right? We see that for me not to be so much in the clouds, I need a little bit more of this downward energy. I need to find a little bit of more grounding, which can be affected through the breath as well as other practices. Or if I'm too attached, I need to actually move towards some aspirations. I need to open up my dreams and stuff, so I'm not so stuck in place. And we see how the breath could affect those systems as it affects the nervous system.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what I'm getting at is, I love that, is, okay, so you describe, I mean, I'm guessing that a lot of people don't know what Upana Vayu is, but like this idea of rising up, you did a great job describing it.
Yeah.
Not like stress, I feel like when you're nervous giving a talk, it brings all the energy up here. And the grounding one, Upana, was like this way. And so, even when I'm doing public speaking, like when I do a yoga teacher training to people, I'm like, okay, if you're rising up and all your energy's up here and you just want to say like, inhale, take a big breath, you got to find your feet. And find that downward flow. Right. And what I was getting at with alcohol and specifically is I feel like our lives bring us up like this, like, oh my God, I got so much stuff to do, I got this thing, and then they drink a glass of wine or two, and it's like, or other ways of chemically calming down. And again, I don't have a hard time with that. I just would love people to use more inside out tools as well. Right. If you don't have the inside out ones that can only regulate with outer chemicals, that's when I think there could be an alarm bell. But my specific question is, do you think stress is like the upward expansion and alcohol kind of the downward sinking feeling? Like the way most people use it, the elusive most people.
Right. I know. I try to stay away from really big generalizations with most people because there's more exceptions.
Well, like, what's the average New Yorker? You know what I mean? There's no.
Yeah.
When we talk averages, it's hard.
Yeah, I mean, all the ways that we regulate everything is chemical or hormonal. Yeah. Right. Whether if we're producing it from the inside or we're taking it from the outside, and that's creating the same thing. So it's we're doing the same thing. But it comes down to like, where do you end up putting reliance on and having to need an outside source of something, or thinking that that's what does it, when you could actually create it yourself without that.
I love it.
And then it could become a healthy thing that it's something that it becomes like, what's your relationship to it? And I think that's with everything. I mean, that's the same thing with relationships. Yeah. When you have a relationship with somebody, it's are you trying to get something from that person that you're not fulfilling yourself? Right? And if that's the case, then it becomes an unhealthy relationship. If you're able to have everything that you need and then offer, and your partner is able to do the same, then it becomes a healthy relationship where you're both are giving and contributing.
No, that's a really good point. And no, it's a great way of looking at it, and it is, what is your relationship with these substances? And I think, if anything, I hope people get from this conversation is, like, there is such a great tool called yoga and meditation, pranayama, and a lot of people have stereotypes of what that's about, especially men, like, I'm not a flexible person, or I'm not a feminine person, I don't know if I want to get in touch with my feminine side, or this is labels. And I'm just wondering, just simple advice. What's your advice? I'm sure you've given this a lot of times to people who say, like, I'm not flexible enough to go to yoga, or just that. I mean, men or female, but especially men.
Right. I think that's an excuse. That's not a reason. Right. Because it's always like, my house is too dirty to have someone clean it. Yeah. I'm too broke. Too broke to start saving money. It's I think oftentimes with anything, if you look for excuses, you'll find them. They're there. Yeah. So instead of looking for excuses why not to, we should always look for, if we know it's something that we want to do, or we know it's something that's healthy, then we find the reasons to do it.
Awesome. That's so cool.
But, like, I would say yoga is for everybody, but it's not the only tool out there to help people do it. Like, if it works for you. Yeah, if it works for you, do it. It's a path. I know so many people that, like, I don't practice yoga, but they find the things that I find through yoga through surfing, and or you and I are, I mean, I think we have this conversation where we find kind of different things through surfing.
Yeah.
Or people, I had a conversation with somebody in an airport once, and I wrote something about it a long time ago, but he said that he loves yoga, he loves coming to the mat because it gets him out of his thoughts and out of his mind, and he uses it as almost a dissociation way to get rid of his problems and his stress and his break for that. And that's not a good or bad thing, that's just what it is. That's how he's using that tool.
Yeah.
I use yoga very differently. I use yoga to get in touch with myself, to understand myself, to be more in my feelings, more in myself. And again, that's not right or wrong, that's just how I'm using that tool. And you just you have to understand yourself.
Was there a time when you didn't have those tools? Like when you weren't in touch with yourself?
Oh yeah, that was
feelings?
I mean, until I was like 29 years old.
Yeah.
Right. It's so funny when I look back at how my relationship was with my old friends versus how my relationship is with my new friends, and even my relationship with my old friends now. Like how those things have changed, and how I have changed as a person, because I wasn't happy. Right. And I didn't know what it was, but I didn't have any tools, and I didn't know what I was looking for. The tools that I had were extreme sports.
Yeah.
That brought me into being present, but I didn't understand that was something that I was lacking. That like jumping out of an airplane made me be more mindful for a brief second.
Yeah.
And that's why I liked it. I thought I liked it because I liked jumping out of planes, but it turns out once I became mindful, I didn't want to jump out of planes anymore. Right? And so it's like, I think one of the things as teachers is why we are so passionate, and I'm going to kind of speak for you because I know it's true of you.
Yeah.
Is we have seen how much this practice has affected us in a positive way, and so we want to share that.
Yeah.
And I think anybody, like if you make something good, or if you find something good or whatever, and you find something that's really positive, and why I feel like yoga has seen such an explosion over the past 20 years, especially the past 10 years, is because people see how much it changes their lives and they tell other people about it.
Yeah.
Right? And that's really like, I've never tried to sell anybody on yoga. I mean, yoga sells itself. I've never tried to sell myself as a teacher, because I'm not teaching me, I'm teaching yoga, right? And which sells itself. And really, like, if you find that positive change from it, it's like pranayama too. I'm not trying to sell people, oh, you need to breathe or whatever. It's like once you learn how, or once I love talking about it, I love teaching it, because it's such an amazing thing. I mean, we have these different avenues that affect our lives positively, right? Movement, diet, sleep, stress, or the lack of stress, or how we use stress, using not avoiding bad stress and cultivating good stress, or eustress, and breathing. And so these things kind of make up our health, right? Our emotional health, our mental well-being, our ability to be in our ventral vagal, to communicate with each other. If you take any one of those things out, any one of those components, if I'm doing everything but I'm not moving, my body really starts to hurt. If I'm not getting good sleep, like I'm affected in every other way. If I am not eating well, if I have a really poor diet, it dramatically affects everything. If all the stress I'm viewing is bad stress, or I'm just like in that, like, then everything else falls apart. The interesting thing is the breathing, the most essential thing that we do. Not a lot of people look at it. So if you're not breathing right, a lot of people don't even know that's an issue. They're over breathing, which over breathing leads to more sympathetic tone, which leads to chronic stress, which leads to breaking down the telomeres in your DNA, which leads to disease, cancer, everything else. So everything like
All that in a
apart.
nutshell means you just feel crappy.
Yeah, you just feel like crap because you're not breathing right. You don't know how to breathe because no one told you it was important.
Yeah.
If people told you diet was important, and it's
Yeah.
obvious.
Yeah.
Well, once you start breathing and you start breathing right, you see how obvious that is.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, hey, we better wrap it here, even though we could sit here and talk all day. But I wanted to say a couple of things. First of all, if you have, especially men in your life, again, our idea of these conversations is to just give men tools. Like when I grew up, I just had with my dad sports and business. We had this range that we could talk about. And that's what I mean by in the box. And we just want to give people more tools to live a better life, to feel better, to have better relationships, to be better parents, to be better co-workers or bosses or whatever we're athletes, whatever we're doing in life. And I know you said you don't want to sell yoga, it sells itself.
Yeah.
But if people are interested in your book, how do they?
Well, I do want to sell my book.
Okay. Different story. Okay. Yeah.
My book is, I mean, you can learn breathing from anybody, and I hope you do, even if you don't go out and purchase my book. Or my book is, it's a lot of tools. It's really what it is. It's more of a handbook, or it's like the breathing Bible, I think.
Yeah.
It gives you everything that you need in a really small, concise package. But it's called the Illuminated Breath. You could get it on Amazon, Book Depository, or pretty much anywhere where you could buy books. It's available for pre-order depending on when this goes out. It's shipping on, I believe, February 23rd.
Okay.
Worldwide.
I get a digital copy very soon.
Yeah.
Right.
And then after that, there'll be the Kindle version, and I think in April I'm going to go and record the Audible version. So if you're like an audio listener, hold out for that, or don't hold out for that, but that'll be good. There is a good reason to get a physical copy, or at least a digital copy of the book, though, because there are so many different charts and diagrams.
I want to plug you too. He actually created with an Apple Pencil his own graphics, man. And they're amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, I did all the illustrations in there.
So check that book out on Amazon or other places wherever you buy books. Get the Audible version, and if you're not one of the 757,000 followers, check him out on Instagram at Dylan Werner.
Dylan Werner Yoga.
Dylan Werner Yoga. Sorry, Dylan Werner Yoga. And it's been a joy, brother.
Yeah, that's awkward handshake.
Yeah, we're good, man. Aloha, give a hug.
Yeah. Always good to chat with you.
Yeah, man, it's been a joy, truly. All right, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Peace.